Hi there, and welcome to Oakland Side 510. I'm Darwin Bond Graham, news editor at the Oakland Side, Oakland's independent nonprofit newsroom. I'm filling in today for our editor-in-chief, Tasneem Raja. Today, illegal dumping in Oakland, why it keeps getting worse, and what the city has tried, and what might actually work. Reporter Eli Wolfe will join me to sort out the mess. After that, we'll talk about Boots Riley's new film that debuted in Oakland, how the search for OUSD's next leader got delayed again, who is paint bombing flock cameras in Oakland, and what you need to know before you vote in the primary election on June 2nd. But first, a word from a local company supporting this podcast. Looking for a workspace in Oakland? Check out WeWork's two locations, 1111 Broadway in City Center, just steps away from BART, and 2201 Broadway, a beautifully designed Art Deco space just a few blocks away. Between the two, you'll find flexible workspaces, meeting rooms, and a vibrant community with regular events and opportunities to connect, whether you're an individual or a growing team. Book a tour at WeWork.com. All right, now let's talk about a problem that Oaklanders have been frustrated with for years. I wanted to start with a story that really illustrates the issue, I think. 1 year ago, a group of city officials were in West Oakland when they noticed two men unloading trash onto a sidewalk. The officials took photos of the men and their truck, including its license plate, and reported the illegal dumping incident to Public Works and the police department. But OPD waited almost a year to do anything. Then in February of this year, almost a year after the incident, the police finally asked for photos and sought witness statements. But by then, it was really too late, and the police said the case had fallen through the cracks. Ironically, it turns out that the city officials who witnessed this illegal dumping incident and the city's slow and ineffective response to it were actually auditors with the city auditor's office, and they were conducting a study of how Oakland handles illegal dumping. That moment captures a lot about where Oakland is when it comes to illegal dumping. The frustration, the improvised workarounds, genuine confusion about who's responsible for fixing it, and why the official systems aren't getting the job done. To help us understand all of this, I'm joined by Eli Wolfe, one of our City Hall reporters at the Oakland Side. Eli, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Darwin.
So let's start with the basics. How big is this problem of illegal dumping?
It's enormous. In 2025, the city received over 25,000 cleanup requests related to illegal dumping. That's an average of about 70 every day. City crews collected over 7 million pounds of waste from city streets in the last fiscal year.
Wow.
And all of this is costing the city a ton of money. Oakland spent nearly $14 million cleaning up illegally dumped trash, plus over $2 million on enforcement.
So we're spending $16 million a year on this problem, and it's getting worse?
It does seem to be that way. The overall cost has been rising. Between 2013 and 2020, the yearly cost was somewhere around $4 million and $6 million a year. And then it really spiked during the pandemic, and it's stayed really high ever since then. Deep East Oakland and West Oakland carry most of the burden. More than a third of the citations for illegal dumping issued in 2025 were in District 7, which is deep East Oakland.
This is a problem that's been driving Oakland crazy for a long, long time. Why hasn't the city been able to solve this?
Yeah, this new city audit, it's a 72-page report published this month, really gets into that. And the short answer is it's not one thing. The whole system is broken in multiple ways all at once. One big finding is that legal trash disposal in Oakland is just too expensive. Oakland residents pay between 20 and 40% more for trash services than people in neighboring cities. even when those cities also use the same waste hauler, waste management. The auditor also found that households in San Jose and San Francisco pay less for comparable services.
And the theory is that if legal disposal were cheaper, people would dump less illegally.
That's what the auditor argues. The city's own cleanup data suggests that most of the illegally dumped trash is actually coming from Oakland homes, not commercial operations. This is something city staff identified, but the auditors also found it when they were out in the field. They came across household items like diapers, clothing, and food scraps in dump piles across the city.
So people are just dumping household trash because it's so expensive for them to dump their trash legally. So the solution essentially could just be making it easier and cheaper for people to throw stuff away, right?
In a nutshell, yeah. Another example here is, the city used to have what they called bulky block parties. These were places where residents could drop off large items for free. Those were cut in 2024 due to city budget constraints. Free bulky pickup is still available, but the audit found that it's barely being used by people in multifamily buildings, which is most people in Oakland. Only about 2% of multifamily units used their free bulky pickup appointment in 2024 and 2025. And that's a pretty big problem.
Yeah.
Also just note that Mayor Lee recently held a bulky block party, and this is one of the things that the council wants to fund as part of its proposed illegal dumping expenditure plan. So this could change in the future.
Got it. That's interesting. Let's move on to enforcement. Can't we just catch and fine people who dump trash on city streets?
Yeah, this is where it gets pretty discouraging. The city issued about 270 citations for legal dumping in all of 2025 out of over 25,000 cleanup requests. So the gap between how much dumping is happening and how much of it is actually being cited is enormous.
Yeah.
And even when people are cited, they often don't pay. The city collected fines from just 25 of those 270 people. That amounted to about $21,000 out of the roughly $228,000 that was owed.
Yeah, your reporting on this makes it really clear that we're issuing fines, but we're barely collecting anything.
Yeah, and on top of that, the audit found that the city's enforcement unit is actually costing Oakland more than it collects. In the last fiscal year, the environmental enforcement unit cost $2 million to operate, while bringing in only about $16,000 in citation revenue. So what we're seeing is the city spends more money issuing the citations than it collects in fines.
A classic enforcement problem, right? Like cities create these tough penalties for violations, but it ends up costing more to try to catch lawbreakers and fine them than the city can actually recover.
Exactly. And there are also communication breakdowns that further impede the work. So one example in the audit, from late 2024 through early 2025, enforcement officers were basically told to patrol just a 20-block stretch between 80th and 100th Avenues. The officers weren't given a ton of guidance on why, and other neighborhoods weren't getting covered. And Public Works leadership later told the auditors that they didn't even know that this was happening. So a pretty bad communication breakdown.
And the surveillance cameras, right? These were installed in 2022 to catch illegal dumpers. Have those helped?
Not as much as city officials hoped. There was an earlier city report that found that enforcement officers on foot were actually more effective than the cameras. And the audit found that some cameras were placed in areas too dark to capture useful images or in locations where there wasn't much dumping happening.
Okay, so if the fines aren't working, the cameras are not really working, the enforcement unit has these communication breakdowns, what are city leaders trying to do right now?
A few different things are in motion right now. Mayor Barbara Lee and Councilmember Zach Unger recently announced this legislation that would raise fines significantly on people caught dumping. Right now, under the city law, first-time violations are $750. This proposal, which is about to get final approval from the council, would raise that to $1,500 for a first offense, $2,500 for a second, and $5,000 for a third. And it would also make it a crime to use a vehicle to dump trash. On top of this, State Senator Jesse Araguin has introduced a state bill that would have the DMV refuse to renew vehicle registrations for people with outstanding illegal dumping fines. which is similar to how unpaid parking tickets can block registration renewals.
Okay, so increasing fines and penalties a lot, maybe that could be an effective deterrent, right?
Yeah, totally. The idea is to give these fines some actual teeth because right now people can just ignore them pretty much. There was also a drone proposal that came forward recently. The city council is expected to vote on a $150,000 contract with this AI company called Airbits to fly drones over Oakland for 6 months and basically scan city streets for trash piles. The drones would fly about 120 to 150 feet up and use this AI software to automatically flag garbage piles so that cleanup crews can be deployed to them more efficiently, faster, what have you.
It seems like drones are like a go-to solution for every problem now. Anyways, is there a privacy concern flying drones all over the city?
So the Oakland Privacy Commission reviewed this technology. The company says the system doesn't use facial recognition or scan license plates and that it automatically blacks out private property. That advisory committee reviewed this proposal and they approved the deal unanimously.
Okay. I'm sure we'll be keeping an eye on that, right?
Definitely.
Last year, the city hired former councilmember Rebecca Kaplan to work on illegal dumping policy. Some of Kaplan's critics blame her for the city's trash fiasco. Is that fair?
So Kaplan was hired to develop illegal dumping policy. That's true. From what we've gathered, she helped craft the ordinance that increased penalties. She's doing other stuff behind the scenes. Kaplan was part of the council when it approved the waste management contract a decade ago. And this is the same contract that the auditor said resulted in Oaklanders paying unusually high rates. As we've also reported, Kaplan played a role in the city approving this kind of controversial settlement with California Waste Solutions a few years ago.
Oh, yeah.
So all this context, I think it makes sense to continue scrutinizing Kaplan's role with trash. But there's also a lot of misinformation out there. One thing I wanted to flag, for example, is that on X, this watchdog group called Oakland Report claimed that the feds indicted the owners of CWS for making illegal political donations to several politicians, including Kaplan. That's not true. The feds indicted the Duongs for allegedly paying bribes to Mayor Sheng Tao and her boyfriend. There was a local ethics investigation into campaign contributions that they were making, but Kaplan was never accused of wrongdoing in that case.
Okay, well, thanks for getting the facts out on that. Let's return to the big picture. Sounds like Oakland is spending millions, fines aren't being collected, enforcement is understaffed and poorly coordinated, and legal trash disposal is too expensive for a lot of residents. The city's trying some stuff, mainly new enforcement measures. But, tell me, is there reason for optimism here?
I mean, some. The audit found that cleanup crews are actually pretty good at responding quickly to reports of dump sites. In 2024, they resolved 85% of 311 work orders within 3 days. So once those piles get reported, they actually do get cleaned up. There's also real momentum around reform, the audit, the new fines, the state bill, the drone program. I think the real question is whether all of this actually changes behavior or whether Oakland is still kind of fighting the same battle 5 years from now. And one of the things, the audit also pointed out that city officials, including the mayor and every council member, are given dumpsters by Waste Management each year as part of the city's contract. But last year, about 70 of those dumpsters went unused. So, I think this is another example of where you have tools that are available, but they're sitting idle and they could be put to work through community cleanups.
Use the dumpsters.
Use them.
Eli, this is very useful context. It's clearly not a simple problem with a simple fix.
It's not, but at least now we have a much clearer picture of why it hasn't been fixed and some of what would actually be needed to change.
Thanks so much for walking us through this.
Thanks, Darwin.
Let me tell you about more recent reporting from our newsroom. There's more in the full stories, which we'll link to in the show notes, and you can always find these at oaklandside.org. Sign up for our daily newsletter if you want to get our reporting in your inbox. Oakland's own Boots Riley had quite a week. His new film, I Love Boosters, had its world premiere right here in Oakland. 2 sold-out screenings at the Grand Lake Theater on Tuesday night, with stars Lakeith Stanfield, Isa Gonzalez, and Papi Liu all in attendance. The surrealist comedy follows a crew of women shoplifters taking on an exploitative fashion designer and the capitalist system she represents. It's the centerpiece film of the San Francisco International Film Festival. The film opens in theaters May 22nd. Four Bay Area artists have been named this year's Rainin Arts Fellows from the Oakland-based Kenneth Rainin Foundation, each receiving an unrestricted $100,000 grant. 3 of the 4 are based in Oakland: muralist Cece Carpio, dancer and choreographer Sarah Crowell, and filmmaker Cheryl Beignet, best known for her groundbreaking 1996 film, The Watermelon Woman. Congrats to the recipients of this year's fellowships. Some significant news from Oakland Unified. The school board is postponing the superintendent search again. Board president Jennifer Broward told the Oakland side the board gave direction to restart the search this fall. Meanwhile, board member Mike Hutchinson told us that interim superintendent Denise Sadler's contract is expected to be extended through June 2027. None of the community engagement the search firm was paid to do ever happened. And separately, more than 2/3 of Oakland's principals signed a letter urging the board to revisit the question of school closures, saying the district can't keep cutting school budgets without addressing how many schools it's actually running. It's official. Oakland's airport will keep its name, Oakland San Francisco Bay Airport. The Port of Oakland and the City of San Francisco reached a settlement this week, ending a 2-year legal battle over the name change. Oakland agreed to drop its appeal and countersuit. The airport cannot call itself San Francisco Bay Oakland International Airport, or several similar versions, but the name it's been using since July 2025 can now stay. Someone, or several someones, has been paint bombing Oakland's flock surveillance cameras. Eli Wolfe reports that cameras on Fruitvale Avenue and West MacArthur Boulevard have been splattered with paint, apparently covering their lenses. OPD says it's investigating. The vandalism might be part of a nationwide pushback against flock safety, the Georgia-based company whose automated license plate readers are now installed at nearly 300 locations across Oakland. Similar incidents have been reported in Virginia, Oregon, Connecticut, and Illinois. Esther Kaplan has been reporting on the fight over transgender inclusion in California high school sports. The California Interscholastic Federation, or CIF, is the body that governs high school athletics in the state. It has had a gender inclusion policy since 2013. But that policy is now under attack from the Trump administration on 2 fronts. First, an investigation by the Department of Education threatening to withhold $44 billion from the state of California if CIF doesn't change its policy. And then a separate Department of Justice lawsuit making a similar demand. Last Friday, CIF leadership held a quarterly meeting in Oakland, and parents, students, and coaches from a Bay Area group called Rainbow Families Action showed up to testify. Among them, a transgender sprinter named Lily, who identified herself as student number 3 in the DOJ lawsuit, and described the harassment she's faced and why she keeps running anyways. The CIF track and field finals are set to begin May 29th. Transgender athlete A.B. Hernandez, who competed last year, is expected to be competitive again. The federation has been quiet about whether it will allow her to compete on equal terms. Hey, you should know that there's a primary election coming up in Oakland on June 2nd, and voters have some important decisions to make. We have guides to some perhaps unfamiliar things you'll see on your ballot. Measure E, a new parcel tax that would raise roughly $34 million a year for police, fire, and homelessness services, and Measure C, which would give small businesses a 1-year break from paying the city's business tax. We also have an overview of everything else on the ballot, from the governor's race to the district attorney contest locally. Links to all of this are in the show notes. You may have heard that dozens of trees near the West Oakland BART station were tagged for removal to make way for the Mandela Station housing development. After a video of the red tags went viral and thousands of people reacted, the city has put the permit application on hold. Now, as Azucena Racia reports, the developer will submit a revised application and hold a community meeting before the public comment period restarts. Good news for Piedmont Avenue regulars, the Lodge is back. The beloved neighborhood bar closed in January when longtime owner Lexi Filippello decided to move on. But new owners, Chris Cashin and Chris Gordon, took over, kept the taxidermy, upgraded the kitchen, and reopened on April 17th. They sold 100 burgers on opening night. More on the new menu, including a kids menu and new hours in our story. If you're looking for something to do this weekend, the 22nd annual Bringing Back the Natives Garden Tour opens 13 private Oakland native plant gardens and 70 gardens across the East Bay to the public on Saturday, May 2nd from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. It's free, but pre-registration is required. Details at the link in the show notes, along with links to all these stories. That's this week's episode of Oaklandside 510. You can find all the stories we talked about today at oaklandside.org. Sign up for our daily newsletter to get our reporting delivered straight to your inbox. If you haven't already, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We love reading those. This episode was produced by Mark Nieto and hosted by me, Darwin Bond Graham. On behalf of our entire newsroom, thank you for showing up for Oakland. We'll see you next week.